So today's episode is a very special one. And Alex, I'm going to introduce you in just a second. But the idea behind today's podcast is it's nice when you get to hear from me. I talk about tax planning or investments or estate planning. It's another thing to hear it from someone who's going through it right now. So the person that you're going to hear from today, he's not a current client. In fact, he reached out to me over my YouTube community page, where if you haven't checked that out, feel free to go do that. I post a ton of cool stuff there. But the idea is I want you to hear from not me for once. I want you to hear me kind of guide Alex, who is going to be our guest today, on how to think about planning, what he's done, what's worked well, what hasn't worked, what he wish he did differently. So we're going to get into it in a moment. But Alex, if you don't mind introducing yourself with just how old are you and where are you coming from today?
Yeah. Hi. So, my name's Alex, and I'm 41 years old. And I'm a software engineer currently. I started actively working towards my financial independence plan starting in about 2017. And yeah, it's been going along pretty well since then.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Well, Alex, we're going to get into it. I'm going to do a few rapid fire questions if that's okay. But I'm going to preface it with when people talk about the FIRE movement, a lot of people are like, Ari, what's that stand for? And traditionally, it stands for financial independence, retire early. And if you guys have heard the podcast, I have a different definition: financial independence, recreational employment. Most people don't want to do nothing. They want to do something. They just want it to be fulfilling. So we're going to talk about this today. But Alex, real quick, what are your total liquid assets today? So not your net worth, but just investments today.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the vicinity of 970 or so $1,000.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
between investments and cash.
So you've saved well, you've invested well. And when you first started saving and investing, was it, hey, a neighbor told me about it? Was it parents? Was it I did research? How did you start that journey?
Well, it's actually, yeah, kind of interesting. So, I started my financial independence journey after I kind of suffered a pretty significant back injury. I had a pinched nerve that was causing some significant sciatica pain, kind of going down my right leg, and it got to the point where I couldn't even really like sit down, and I ended up going to physical therapy and having to basically take time off of work, and I realized I was like, I've been in a career where I'm sitting ever since as long as I can remember,
Yeah.
and how much longer am I going to be able to do this, was the question, and then it happened again about a year later, and I was like, this is serious. I'm this is a reoccurring problem. I've been trying to to resolve it with exercise and diet and things like that, but it's not, how much longer of a career do I have left?
Right.
And as I was laying there, like trying to recover, I kind of stumbled into another podcast called the Money Guy Show.
Yeah, well aware.
Yeah, you know about them, and the Choose FI podcast, and then that kind of brought me into the greater world of maybe if I work toward this aggressively, if I get to the point where I no longer can work, then hopefully me and my family will be okay. And I really I think about those, like this injury. I've had it happen a couple more times since then. It's been about 4 times since
Oh,
2017 or so. And I think about the root causes of that. And I think a lot about how in my 20s in particular, and even my early 30s, I worked a lot, and by a lot I mean, I was almost sleeping at work. I was,
oh my.
70, 80 hours a week, working at, jobs that weren't necessarily compensating me, appropriately for
Sure.
that level of work, but I was hooked on it. Sometimes software engineers, I know it's a pretty common thing, but you get hooked on solving problems, and you feel this sense of autonomy, and it's kind of addicting, and that addiction can really catch up with you if you let yourself, like, fall into it. And that's, I feel, a lot of what happened to me. This reoccurring back injury, was the result of not taking care of myself for decades, kind of prioritizing work over my health. I also got about 12 years ago or so, I was diagnosed with diabetes, and type 2 diabetes. And that was, purely the result of poor health habits I had developed over a lifetime of, like, all right, well, it's 2 a.m. and I'm still working. I'm gonna, down a couple energy drinks and, drink some soda to keep myself going.
Yeah.
When I was at my worst health, right when that happened, I weighed 313 pounds,
Wow.
and it was right now I'm at about 210. I'm actually controlling the diabetes mostly through diet and exercise,
Amazing.
but I had to kind of reject that life that I had been living in my 20s. I had to realize, like, this addiction to work was killing myself, literally.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what ended up driving me here. I don't know whether early retirement is necessarily in my future. I mean, it
Yeah.
might end up being forced on me if I,
Sure.
if I can't get this
Well, Alex,
back
let's
injury.
talk about this. I
Yeah.
don't take lightly what you just shared. To me,
Mhm.
one, thank you for sharing that, because all of those that are listening to this are going, wow, I can tell you right now, if you're interested in early retirement, I say this on the show, I'm
Yeah.
not in love with that. I'm in love with the concept of you being able to do more of what you want to do. And if
Yeah.
financially you can be in a position to do so, wonderful. Even if it means you keep working. But what you
Yeah.
just said there, Alex, is the key is, hey, you just kept working because it's, oh my gosh, it's ingrained in me, that level of autonomy. A lot of
Yeah.
people listening right now are in their 50s. They're a few years out from retirement. They're
Mhm.
early 60s. We have others in their 30s. And what you just shared is, I just cannot tell you how real it is, because I have an ebook. And in the ebook, I force people to answer a question, to download it. I say, what are you most excited to never have to deal with ever again? And people say, answering emails on the weekends. People say working till 2 a.m. People say all these things that you just said. So it's one thing to hear it from me. It's another thing to hear it from you, where it's very real. So safe to say, correct me if I'm wrong here, Alex, you're going, Ari, the wake up call was my health was being deteriorated. I wanted to focus on the financial side to understand, when am I in a position to take care of my family if, God forbid, anything doesn't allow me to keep working. Is that right?
Yes, definitely, definitely. And I think, being able to work on my terms as well is a great, at first, when I first started this journey, I was running from something. I was running away from this inevitable, like, what felt like an inevitable, like, forced end of my career, essentially. And as time went by, I realized, like, well, I could actually run towards things too. Once I achieved a certain level of kind of I wouldn't say I wouldn't call myself financially independent right now, but I feel like I'm coming onto the cusp. And I realized, well, I can take risks in my career that I didn't feel like I could before, and I can enforce my personal boundaries between work and life in a way that I was not doing intentionally before. And someday, if I achieve a strong enough level of financial independence, I could take a very long sabbatical, or even go into early retirement and focus on my health even further, and focus on my
Yeah.
family. These are all great things to run towards.
Love
And
it.
so,
Love it.
yeah, it's morphed over time, but that's yeah.
What you're alluding to, Alex, is harder than continuing to work. And people are like, Ari, wait, what did you just say? You heard that right. It is actually harder to think about, oh my gosh, what amount do I need to save and invest so I can be in a position to do what I want to do? It's easier to just keep working because you already know it. It's already a little comfortable, even if your health is being negatively impacted. So what you're actually doing is noble, and other people sometimes just need to hear it. Wow, yeah, I need to think about this, or I'm not taking care of the health to the degree that I feel I should. And I feel that today. I love what I get to do, but some days meetings get back to back, and then all of a sudden you're like, I didn't go work out, and I didn't take a lunch break. And now more than ever, because we're working from home, a lot of us, it's like works with us forever. It just never leaves you. So Alex, what I think you brought up there was really wise. I'm going to ask you a few quick fire questions. Then I want to get into a few other things that you noted over email, which I just think are too important not to bring up. What is your income today?
Yeah, so today I'm making about 170,000 a year. Yeah, and my wife makes about 60.
Okay. Do you feel you're like, hey, I really feel fairly compensated for the work I do? Is it I don't totally know? Thoughts?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would say that I do feel well compensated. Uh in theory there are software companies out there where you could make a lot more money.
Sure.
Sometimes I've heard at the cost of your work-life balance, but it's not a trade-off I'd be willing to make.
Yeah.
And I feel like my actual living expenses end up being about $60,000 a year. So
Got it.
I've got plenty of buffer room to continue to save and invest aggressively.
You do. How much are you saving today to 401ks versus a brokerage account, Roth IRAs?
Yeah. Well, so what I do right now is I'm both my wife and I max out our 401ks. And basically everything else I get that isn't used for living expenses or, essentially yeah, actually I guess I would say that everything that's not for living expenses we throw into our taxable brokerage. There was a time where I was doing the backdoor Roth
Yeah.
conversion. Um, I, it's a complicated story, but I ended up feeling like maybe that's something I ought not to do. It's kind of complicated, but I ended up deciding kind of for personal uh ethical reasons, I decided to
Yeah.
stop doing it. Not that I would ever blame anyone else for doing it, but it's yeah,
Absolutely. No,
complicated stuff.
actually, I started to interrupt there, Alex. I hear that often, and people
Mhm.
sometimes will go, Ari, backdoor Roth. There's something about hearing the words backdoor, going, hey, this is a sneaky tax technique. I want to do this. A lot of people don't do this. I want to be part of the people that do this. That's kind of the allure to it. But sometimes it actually makes most sense to not do it. It's like, hey, what if I do want to retire early? I don't want to have to worry until this age to worry about things. And it's just simpler. Also, you don't have to worry about, hey, do I have another IRA? What does that mean from an aggregation rule? There's lots of nuance to it. But what you just said is actually fairly common. But I now want to talk about, which is a little different. This might surprise you, but I often ask people, how much are you spending on you? And I'm not talking about the mortgage. I'm not talking about, gas or groceries. I'm saying, how much do you spend on fun Alex things? And if you don't know, that's okay. But
Yeah,
that's question one. I'm going to give you part two to the question so you can think about both. The
yeah.
part two to the question is there anything today that you feel you're not doing for financial reasons that you say, REF, if I did have more, I would absolutely, go to this gym instead, or I would, whatever that may be.
Mhm. Well, yeah, I guess so I feel like we put aside, so it varies, the actual amount varies pretty widely per month, but
Sure.
I kind of try to shoot for a target goal of about $300 or so a month for like, dining out and like, having a, kind of fun nights out as a family.
Yeah.
And then like discretionary spending, usually about $500 a month. But it definitely ebbs and flows. And it's been particularly interesting seeing it during the pandemic, because there's been some months where it's like, well, we literally can't do anything, especially because we also had our kid during the pandemic. So those things combined to, we were completely shut in for those couple of years. So that was like a really low point in time in terms of discretionary spending. But
Yeah.
things have mostly gotten back to normal now, and maybe even a little bit over, because we're doing more things with the kid, taking her out to
Yeah.
museums and things
If
like that.
you're Alex, I'm going to interrupt real quick. If your salary doubled tomorrow, would you go, Ari, right now we're spending $800 a month, call it 500 for stuff that's fun, 300 dining out. Are you like, I would do twice amount like that? I would like to do much more. Or is it, no, we're kind of doing what we want to do?
Yeah, I would say we're pretty much doing what we want to do. I could see it going up if we were to like, I think when our daughter's a little older and we're able to like kind of travel a little more easily with
Sure.
her, I could see a world where we start setting aside more money for travel. And because I have missed that. But with the realities of our kind of 2.5-year-old kid right now, it's a tougher situation. So I picture that maybe being something we do yeah, maybe when she's like 4 or 5, hopefully in a better position to start really getting out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. What cars do you drive today?
Oh, so I drive a 2006 Scion XA.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got about 140,000 miles on it. I've owned it since 2006. When I first bought it, it was the worst financial decision I ever made because I bought the car new and shortly after realized maybe I shouldn't have done that. But I've held on to it ever since then. And it's funny, I can't even really imagine driving another car at this point because it's such a comfortable little car. Like it rides high, but
Yeah.
it's also like, it's nice and compact. You can see out all the windows. Like whenever I get like a rental car or like the cars in the shop and they give me a loaner, like all the newer cars that I've driven, they feel like these kind of like you're driving in a tank in
Yeah.
comparison. It's just because I've been driving this little car for so long, but I'm like I like, I can't picture driving like an SUV or anything like
Right.
that. Like
Yeah.
I'm in this car till the wheels fall off, I guess.
Totally. I'm the same as you. I have a Mazda and you couldn't do anything to get me out of the Mazda. And then I'll get a rental car and it's a larger car. I'm like, why am I driving a Hummer? But of course it's not a Hummer.
It feels
So
like
yeah, you're like, why is this a tank?
it.
I want to talk now, Alex, if that's okay. You sent me an email and I'm going to read a little
Okay.
bit of what you said because
Yeah.
it's just too wise to not share. And then I want your input on it. So Alex had sent me a note. And by the way, those that are tuning in, this is the first time I'm speaking with Alex. So the idea here is I want you to hear from people who are going through it right now. They're trying to save, they're invest, and they want to make sure they have a healthy work-life balance because it's really easy to just save, and not take time to do more fun things. So if there's anything you're hearing from this, Alex, it's I want you to go spend a little bit more on you. Not because you're going, Ari, if you feel you can do everything you want to do, then great. And right now, hey, we've got a little girl, we're not traveling. Maybe though, you can set aside funds now so that when you do travel, it's guilt-free and you're kind of putting that off. So I invite you really because I'm telling you right now, I speak with people who are retired, they're in their late 60s, people retire in their early 50s, and all of them say, Ari, I'm in a good spot now. I wish I had traveled more. I wish I had done this while I had my energy and my health because it's not fun to talk about. Nobody knows when we're going to have a back issue. I'm a soccer player that I can guarantee I'm going to need hip surgery with the amount that I play. And so none of us know. So just want to allude to that. But let's talk now a little bit. This is what you had said me, Alex. You had said the following, and I appreciate once again you sharing this. You said, Ari, I worked in a lot of closets and secondhand smoke-filled rooms. I spent many years without health insurance, barely scraped by working at startups that I'd given my heart to, but were never going to have a chance of working out in retrospect, which of course none of us can know. I only stabilized from a financial standpoint once I ended up scoring a job out in Seattle at a larger company. And a lot of people, by the way, I'm a pause, there's more to it. But Alex, a lot of people are like, Ari, I want to go work for this startup. It's exciting. It's new. There's also a lot of value in working with a larger company where you do have benefits and that income is stable. And you had said here, the journey was interesting, full of crazy stories that you don't hear about when you talk to, say, an engineer who worked at, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google their whole career. And you could talk about the lessons, which I want to hear. But you said, Ari, the early part of my career, one, it caused the end of my first marriage. It caused health problems that persist to this day and also set my career progression back. And I would love the opportunity to warn and educate other people about some of these negative effects that can sneak up on you if you're chasing the high of work without paying attention to the other aspects of your life. So that to me is a very powerful statement. Alex, of course, if there's a story that comes to mind, I want you to share it now. But if there's anything else that you're going, Ari, I really would love people to know this about my financial situation and what I wish I did differently and how I'm thinking about health, specifically in relation to my money.
Yeah. I think the most important thing is like, I remember vividly in my 20s, being at this small startup and I was living it. I bought the Kool-Aid. I felt like this was going to be a wild success. And I basically lived there. I worked, just a stupid amount of time at that job. And yeah, it's, you can you don't realize how harmful that is until it's too late. Like the
Mm,
the harm that it does is harm that it's doing while you're still feeling good. You're getting this high from working late and solving these problems and making a bunch of cool features or troubleshooting things. And you're like, you're getting this high. It's an adrenaline rush. But you don't realize like, the the damage it's doing, you find out years later, or you find out when you look back, you're like, what did I really do with my 20s? Like where, like all, when all your memories are sitting at a desk, and it's something I wouldn't want anyone who's earlier in their career to have to endure. It's a you may do something like that and it may work out or it may not. It's kind of a gamble, either way when it comes to a startup. But even if it does pay off, what have you lost? You've lost time. If you got in as deep as I got in, you lose relationships.
Yeah.
It's a and those are things that you can't get back. You can always, like I did, you could always start the financial journey later in life and catch up. And it doesn't take, like you don't have to be in I guess if you could consider like the tiers of software engineering jobs, you don't have to be in that like A tier, making $400,000 a year at Amazon kind of tier to catch up with your financial goals. But no matter what you do, you're never going to get that time back. And it doesn't feel real when you're in your 20s. When you're in your 20s, that time feels cheap. But then when you're looking back on it, it's actually very expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And Alex, not enough people will really sit down, in my opinion, to do the hard work, which is, am I truly putting myself in the best position? So Alex from 10 years from now goes, yeah, I'm really happy. And regrets aren't a terrible thing, but it becomes a terrible thing when you ignore it and go, you know what? I know there's going to be ramifications, but I just don't want to think about it right now because it's easier. And then you're like, oh my gosh, my weight, my health, my relationships, and prioritizing is not difficult. It's not as if the people listening right now are going, Ari, I love my work more than my family. But it's almost as if the implementation of their life, if someone were to look at them from outer space, it looks like that because they're like, I see you're always working. You're not actually with your family, even though you say that's most important because it's easier said than done. What are you doing today, Alex, to take care of your health?
Well, it's I'm fortunate in that I work for an employer who has kind of uh discarded the old software engineering notions of crunch time, which is like, kind of mandatory or voluntary overtime, and so they don't want anyone working more than 40 hours a week. So I don't work more than 40 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one nice boundary that I've set, which lets me have time with the family and time to exercise, time to prepare healthier food, where like in my 20s I just go grab whatever I could,
Yeah.
like go take a 10-minute lunch break to go out and grab some fast food and bring it back to the little closet I was working in, and it's so a lot of those things. Yeah, I guess those are probably the three biggest things. I also taking my vacation time, kind of more aggressively, I guess I'd say. I didn't even
Yeah.
really have vacation time back when I was working at these earlier jobs. They weren't the kind of places that gave vacation time. But this place, they give a generous amount of vacation time, and I try to take it. With the pandemic, made it more difficult, like we were talking about with the kid, also makes it a little more difficult. But like getting out there and especially just before the pandemic happened, we went out to Japan and to France, and then we went on our honeymoon to Spain, and it was taking 2 or 3 weeks at a time to get out there and really kind of enjoy it and get past the work mentality. You know what I mean? When you're on vacation, but your mind's still thinking about work, you need a few days to get past that, making the amount of vacation long enough that you kind of forget that work is a thing that exists. And then that is those were, I guess, the big things.
Very helpful. And you had mentioned also a number. There's a goal in your mind of, all right, I want to hit this number. Do you mind sharing what that number is?
Yeah, so right now my target number in my mind is 1.6 million.
Yeah.
So that's
Cool. Part of why I do these why I do everything I do is there's a
Mhm,
lot of people that have a number in mind and they've run
mhm,
some spreadsheets off that they've done lots of cool calculations on their end. And
mhm,
I want to be able to tell them that if you just do good planning, you could potentially retire earlier. And some people go, Ari, oh my gosh, I just never considered it this way. Other people, it's, hey, I kind of already knew that, but I just didn't know. I don't want to leave anything on the table. And to
mhm,
me, the reason that I'm so obsessed with this planning is if I could get you 1, 2, 3, 4 years back of health, good luck quantifying that for the latter years of your retirement. So I tell people this 1.6 number, it that you have in your head, Alex, part of
mhm,
this is a early retirement audit, where a lot of these episodes I'm going to be doing is educating to help you understand whether that's realistic, whether it's not. And the first thing I tell people is not if we get X number of growth or 9% or 10%, but spending. Spending is the gigantic variable here, where if you said, Ari, I want to spend 60,000 a year adjusted for inflation after taxes every single year, would I ever run out of money? And so the first temperature check is, what is a sustainable withdrawal rate? And most people talk about the 4% rule. It's not
mhm,
totally applicable to an early retirement. So there's a new study done by John Guyton. It's called the guardrails approach. And the idea here is if you follow certain rules and take from certain accounts and invest a certain way, you can take out between 5.2 to 5.6%, and you're never going to run out of money. And that's for 40 years, which is a lot more applicable to people retiring at age 50. Even then, we want a little bit of buffer because you just don't want to always say, oh my gosh, I retired 1 or 2 years earlier and that's going to stress me out. I tell people there's a difference between retiring early on paper and retiring early. The difference is there are people that retire early on paper, but they second guess travel, or they second guess going out to eat, and they second guess that gym membership. And to me, that's not a successful early retirement. So what you just said there, Alex, you're like, all right, we're spending 60,000. Are there going to be more expenses in the future with more kids? Of course. Are there going to be education and travel? And these are good expenses, but it's not as if you're just probably going to be doing nothing for the next 40, 50 years from an income perspective. Maybe there's something you really like. Maybe they offer health insurance. Maybe your wife still wants to keep working. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this, but you are closer than you think. And I'm not in the business of telling anyone a rosy picture. But if you're
mhm,
going, Ari, I've got nearly $1 million and you just said 5.2 to 5.6 is sustainable. Yeah, I
mhm,
just told you, you could reasonably take 50,000 a year and go spend that for 40 years and you won't run out of money. The
mhm,
difference is, what if markets don't perform well? What if tax brackets change significantly? What if there's a major health event? Okay, let's plan for those. But the reason I love doing what I do is because I want you, Alex, to know, oh my gosh, what if it's not 1.6? What if at 1.3 I would be comfortable? Because the difference between that $300,000 right there might just save your life from a health perspective. And so
mhm.
that's why I care about this so much. But any questions or thoughts here on any of that?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't heard about that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a look into that. You said this was a guardrails
Yeah, it's
study?
called the guardrails approach. John Guyton. So I'll give everyone a quick 3-minute background so no one falls asleep during this. But I tell everyone that the 4% rule, it was developed by Bill Bangin. And so what he did is he said, Ari, he didn't talk to me, of course, but he said, Ari, what if I have $1 million? I can take out 40,000 a year and I'm not going to run out of money. But it didn't account for taxes. So it's, do we need to take 45 or 50 to end up with 40,000? That's my first kind of issue with the study from an early retirement perspective. Number two is, okay, Ari, what if I invest in just two asset classes, intermediate term US bonds and US large caps? That is the 4% rule. This other study was saying, all right, I don't want to just, invest in two asset classes. What if we don't just close our eyes and pull from certain accounts? What if we pull from the Roth last? What if we pull from the brokerage first? What if we do these tax strategies in between? Those
Mhm,
strategies show that you can take between 5.2 to 5.6, and that will last you for 40 years. That's a big difference, that 10-year gap right there. And so for some people, they're like, all right, I didn't even know that was a thing. I retired 6 years earlier because of the planning process. And I have clients right now that listen to these episodes and like, yes, Ari, we use this approach and we love it. The other thing is you're not giving yourself this income that no matter what you're taking. That sounds really weird, but I'll rephrase it. When you're implementing the guardrails approach, what you're doing is you're saying, if markets are performing really well, I'm going to say, Alex, pretend you're a client. I'm going to say, Alex, I know you want to go to Tokyo again. let me please, this should be the year you do it. Markets are performing well. Please give yourself a raise from your portfolio. And then in other years, I might go, Alex, can we push that trip off maybe 3 months or 6 months if we're in a market downturn? You might go, Ari, nope, I've already got it planned. I'm going. And I'm going to say, great, Alex, you're in a position to do so. Please do it. But it's my job to show you the opportunity cost of if we were to push that off because of the market downturn, it could mean 40, 60, 80,000 more dollars in the future. And you might go, Ari, wow, that's a trade-off I like knowing about. I'm still going to take the trip. Or you go, you know what? No, this is a flexible trip. I could push that off. And so the goal here is how do we just optimize our money?
Yeah, I dig that. That's cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Alex, that's really what I wanted to go through today. I hope this, I can tell you right now, people are going to resonate with this. The last question I'm going to leave you with, pretend you're retired tomorrow. What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah. Well, I've thought a lot about volunteering for nonprofits in the area. There's a few that I think would be that I'd like to kind of dabble into, see if they mesh well with me. I have wanted to get back into writing, and haven't really taken that time, but I'd love to do that. I'd love to travel. Um, I have a number of hobbies that I enjoy, photography, and is probably the one that I enjoy the most lately, but I have a number of them. Yeah, I could see myself doing any of those. And I also have a lot of side projects I'd love to have more time to work on that I think would be fun. But unlike when I was younger, I don't want to do them layered on top of my day job. If I did, they're like things I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do that. These don't have to be done right now. I can hold that off because I don't want to turn that into a second job and end up in the same situation I was in before.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you, Alex, because a lot of people are telling me, Ari, I'm scared to death to retire because I don't know what on earth I'm going to do. Like I don't have other hobbies because I've worked that hard, and it's not admirable. It really isn't. What's admirable is taking time to go, yeah, you like photography? Great. Start doing it now. See what you really like. Understanding what you're going to do with your time in retirement. It's not easy. And so I love that you're already like, yes, Ari, I've got side projects, I've got hustles, I've got photography, I've got all these different things that I'm excited to do in addition to family, of course.
Yeah, and it wasn't that way before, until I came into this different mindset of thinking I can live for something other than work. I didn't have hobbies and I didn't have side interests. I had side projects, but they were all related to doing more of what I do at work, essentially, feeding that addiction. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's easy for both of us to be a little bit hardwired that way because we do love what we do. And so when you love what you do, it's really easy to let other things go by the wayside. So Alex, really appreciate you coming on the show. Just want to tell everyone right now, once again, if this is something where you're like, wow, this was a really helpful episode, shoot me a note. I want to know about it. If you're like, I want more stories like Alex, or I want Alex again to tell this other story, or you know what, I want to tell my story. I think I've got something that'll resonate with people. Reach out to me. I tell people my email is ARI, that's Ari at ROOT financialpartners.com. You can submit a question on my website, earlyretirementpodcast.com. Check out our YouTube community page, check out the podcast. And I tell everyone it's more fun to retire early with your friends. So if this episode was helpful, please do share it with someone who you want to travel with, who you want to be retired with, so you guys can spend time together. That's it for today. Alex, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.